Los Angeles.
Portions of the day's programming are reproduced by means of electrical transcriptions or tape recordings.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the best 2 hours of sports talk radio on the internet. You are listening to 87 Live on 87 Sports Fans Radio. I'm Keith Grieve.
And I am Steve Taylor.
How are you, sir?
Doing good, man. I'm getting close to the big day. T-minus 4 days now until I am a very happily married man.
Good for you. Good for you. A reminder that this and every broadcast is brought to you by CG Imaging. That's cg-imaging.com. CG Imaging, virtually creating reality. So, nuptials aside, next week you will be missing in action. So,
I will be on my honeymoon, ladies and gentlemen.
It's everyone's last chance to get your final licks in at Steven. So give us a call at 585-633-7487. That's 585-633-7487. You can also email us at youguyssuck@87sportsfans.com and facebook.com/87sportsfans, and also Twitter. The handle is at 87sportsfans. So got an action-packed show for you. Besides our usual visit from Jim Saranteas, the Fantasy Greek, we also will be joined by Carl Pfeiffer, the owner of the website BuffaloSomeday.com. Got a new book coming out. We'll talk a little AFC East, a little Buffalo Bills. But that is later in the program, and we will start off with a trip around Major League Baseball. Steven, what's on the top of your mind when you look at what's going on in baseball?
What's on the top of my mind right now is one of the main stars of The Sandlot was arrested for abusing a police officer.
I did not see that. Who was that?
Breaks my heart. It is, let me grab his name. I don't want to misspeak. See, this is what it means by not being prepared.
See, you started something and you weren't prepared to talk about it here.
I know. He played the young lead.
Who?
In
Smalls?
No, not Smalls.
The young lead in The Sandlot?
The kid that ended up becoming
Benny
the announcer.
Benny the Jet Rodriguez?
No, he became the player. I'm talking about the kid that became the announcer.
That was Smalls.
It was Smalls then, yeah, Smalls. He got arrested for beating up a police officer.
Really?
Yes. How awesome is that? It hurt my youth, you know what I mean? I love that. I love that movie. That makes me think of baseball. I just thought we should start with that.
Well, that's funny because as you were trying to fumble for it, I typed in Sandlot and arrest, and I found an article on TMZ from April 20th, 2009. That says, sources tell TMZ Marty York, who played the smart mouth sidekick Yeah in the flick 16 years ago, was driving with his girlfriend in Los Angeles when they got in a heated argument. York says his girlfriend struck him with her high heel shoe, and he retaliated by punching her in the eye, causing a cut.
Well, this is Tom Geary, Guiry, who did play Smalls. Was told in an airport that he was too drunk to drive, so he headbutted the cop that was trying to stop him. He got arrested for that.
That makes total sense.
Which a lot of people were wondering, because there was recently a reunion for The Sandlot's 20th anniversary, and he was absent.
Go figure.
People were wondering why, and now we know. You're killing me, Smalls.
Yeah.
You're goddamn killing me.
You're headbutting me, Smalls. That's what we should change it to.
Okay, but other than that, I have to say, I am still very surprised by the Boston Red Sox.
Why are you so surprised?
Because
I told you during the preview that they were going to be a good team.
Okay. Yes, you absolutely did not tell me anything like that.
That's not true at all.
The New York Yankees, to steal a line from the great Dennis Green, they are who we thought they were. they're starting to show their true colors. They had a very solid first half of the season, but because of all the injuries, because of all the controversy, they are quickly slipping away, and before you know it, they will be locked securely in the basement like we all thought they would be. But the Boston Red Sox, who we also thought would be sweeping up the basement with them, somehow is in first in American League East. And, I mean, right now they have a 1.5 lead over Tampa, which, I mean, how they're doing this, I still am amazed. I mean, I guess it proves that sometimes having a true veteran team helps in the long run. You know what I mean? It's something about this team that's, to me, is the big. A lot of people are going to say that, you know, maybe the Dodgers or Cleveland or even Pittsburgh are the surprise team. But right now it's the Red Sox. I think that by far they are the most surprising team in baseball right now.
Okay. In all honesty, I picked Boston only a game better than the Yankees in fourth place.
Exactly.
But I did say that they would be better, and I said that they may very well make the AL East a 4-team race. And sure enough.
But you never thought they'd be
what
like
they're
this.
doing. No, 69-46. No, I only picked them for 77 wins for the whole year.
Yeah. I mean, percentage-wise right now, they're the third best team in baseball.
But the Yankees are closer to my prediction of finishing last.
Oh, man, they are. I mean, they're truly. And, you know, I kind of feel bad for some of the players that really fought in that first half of the season, because right now any hope of them making a run or making a push is being completely killed by the whole biogenesis scandal and A-Rod's appealing his suspension and whatnot. I mean, you know, for a douchebag like him who is being the biggest hypocrite in the world, trying to make himself to be the victim in this whole scenario, every time he talks, he's like, I want to do what's best for my team. I want to do what's best for the game. The best thing for the game and your team is to just go away. So that, to me, every time he says that, I want to just reach through the radio and strangle him. Because it's like, you absolutely are not doing what's best for either baseball or your team right now.
No.
And the Yankees, you know, they're getting dragged down with him. Now, mind you, I put all the blame on the Steinbrenners because they're the ones that wanted to sign him to this new contract. It wasn't, you know, Cashman was against it. And so I put all the blame on the Steinbrenners for this, but it's sad to see. It really is, because even those who don't like the Yankees, and I know you'll never like them, but I don't know. It's one of those franchises that you don't expect to be like this.
I wrote a piece in March about how the Yankees being bad kind of left a sour taste in my mouth, if you remember correctly.
Yeah. Oh, I do. I mean, right now they're 2 games above 500, but I wouldn't be surprised in a week if they're sub 500 easily. I mean, they've lost 3 in a row. I don't really see them making any push at all. I mean, they like I said before, they kind of lucked out with that first half of the season as far as pulling together as a team and getting over all the injuries, which, you know, I think people have to give them their due. They've been decimated by injuries. I mean, just absolutely decimated. But you look at Sabathia, he looks like he's way past his prime this year. He's pitching like garbage. The only player on that team that's really doing anything is Mariano Rivera, a guy who's probably 72 years old. Who knows what his true age is? And he's the only one that's actually doing something, but he hasn't had the opportunity to come in and get any saves because usually they're losing by too much.
585-633-7487 if you want to call in and join the discussion. Touring around the Major League Baseball standings, talking New York Yankees right now. They do have the 4th best whip in the American League. So, and if you remember, as we were going through our show, and I made my prediction that I'm going to remind everybody, not one single so-called expert thought that the Yankees were going to be this bad, except me. I'm just going to say, and my one argument was, how are they going to score runs?
Yes.
Where are the runs going to come from? And if you look, the only team that has scored less runs than them is the Chicago White Sox in the entire American League.
Who they've lost the first 2 games of the 3-game series that they're playing right now.
They are 76 runs below the American League average for team runs.
It's disgusting.
Look, they've had injuries. They have issues, okay? They're getting old, too, okay? So let's not forget that. And the succession plan does not seem to be there because you don't hear about any big names in their minor leagues that are just chomping at the bit, that they're dying to bring up. A-Rod goes out, and they have, 2 home runs from the third base position until he comes up.
Yeah.
And, Jeter, I can't think of the name of his replacement right now off the top of my head, but not exactly.
It's Nunez.
You're right, Nunez. Not exactly lighting it up offensively.
No. He's hitting 228. I mean, right now in the entire in tonight's game, the starting Yankees, the only batter hitting over 300 right now is A-Rod at 333. The next batter is Cano hitting 286. I mean, where are you going with that? I mean, it's disgusting how bad their offense is. And it's a team that has made pretty much all of their success off of their bats because they've always been hammered for horrible pitching. And here you have them right now just they're not able to hit a ball off a tee at this point.
Last in the American League in OPS. Playing in Yankee Stadium half the year.
Yeah.
So there's issues, and unless there's some kind of Scranton minor league scouting report that I don't know about, it seems like they're going to go back to the Yankees of the 1980s where it was just throw money at whoever we can to try to bring them in. And your brother tweets, Yankees third baseman combined have 4 home runs. The Cubs pitching staff has 5. And there you have it.
And there you have it. Nice stat line, Brian. Nice stat line.
Way to come up with that.
Now, in the thing that's amazing to me, though, is, like you said, they are probably going to go and do what they did in the 80s, and you can say even in the 2000s, by just throwing money at players. And you could look at someone like Vernon Wells, which they did this year, who are big names but past their prime. I mean, they technically did it with Ichiro. They did it with Vernon Wells. And that's just in the last couple of years. The thing they should do is what they did in the 90s and what propelled them to the success they had in the 90s and early 2000s, which they based the core of their team around prospects. I mean, who ever heard of Derek Jeter, Mariano Rivera, Andy Pettit,
they were all homegrown.
Jorge Posada before they were
talent.
on the Yankees? No one knew who the hell they were. But they were young, talented players that the Yankees based their team around that were great, and they came up through a system.
The hub of those late 90s great Yankee teams were all homegrown. Bernie Williams,
Yeah.
They all came up through the system. And free agency, being a Mets fan, I can tell you, does not work.
No. Not at all. And, there's not – and for anybody to not look at this year's Pittsburgh Pirate team and not see that it doesn't matter the money. I mean, I know a lot of teams have proven it. Oakland with their whole system they base Moneyball off of. The Pittsburgh Pirates, what is it? A-Rod makes 3 times more than the entire roster or something ridiculous like that. And the fact that they are right now easily one of the best teams, if not the best team in baseball, on a paltry, I mean, how many players that just got nailed with the biogenesis scandal make more than the entire roster of the Pirates? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And for teams not to look at that and be like, well, maybe we shouldn't give them these ridiculous contracts. Maybe we should just try to find the talent. I just don't understand why they don't go that route. I mean, it might take time, but the Pirates have been good the last couple of years, and now their talent has kind of caught up with it. And they're going to make a serious push in the National League for the right to go to the World Series.
Everyone is waiting for the Pirates to lose steam and fall off, but it's not happening. I mean, they did get clobbered on August 1st, 13-0 to the Cardinals, but they've come back to win 3 of the next 5 after that. So a little bit of resiliency. You know what I mean? You're not ready to crown them, NLCS favorites, but it's getting harder and harder to look past them.
I think that, to me, that's going to be the best race. Them in St. Louis for the Central. Mm-hmm. That's going to come down to the wire, and it's just going to be a fun end of August going into September. It's just going to be really fun to watch. I'm really looking forward to it.
I'm trying to see who's a free agent in 2014 for the Pirates. See how long they can sustain this for. A.J. Burnett will be a free agent. Clint Barmas will be a free agent. Jeff Karstens. There's a bunch of players eligible for, arbitration and pre-arbitration, but for the most part, I mean, the big name, Andrew McCutcheon, is locked up until, through 2017. So it's the core, unless somebody gets trigger happy and stupid. And the other one is Pedro Alvarez that will be due for arbitration. There's a $700,000 team option for next year, but he will probably be the next one to get a long-term deal. Oh, and he's represented by Scott Boras. So good luck with that.
Well, if you look at the end of their season too, I mean, the last 2 days of August and first day of September, they have to play St. Louis at home. So that's going to be a great series. Then they got 3 games at Milwaukee, who Milwaukee is meh. They're manza this year. There's nothing spectacular. They're not going to make any push for the wild card and whatnot. Then they have to go to St. Louis. Then they have to go to Texas, who after losing Nelson Cruz for the rest of the season with the biogenesis scandal, they're going to be a shell of themselves. And then they play the Cubs, the Padres, the Reds, the Cubs again, and then they finish at the Reds. Now, Cincinnati, they are also knocking on the door, and they're in third right now in the Central. But, I mean, that's not a very difficult end in September there. Mm-hmm. They could easily win, say, 75% of those games, maybe even more. So I think the Pirates, they're really setting themselves up to have, the end of their schedule is cake. I don't mean to sound too optimistic, but it's really easy. I mean, other than those series against St. Louis, they're not really playing anyone that's tearing knocking anyone's socks off right now.
If you listen to the reporters that are And we're back. A little technical glitch there. We'll get Steve-O back on the line. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll have Carl Pfeiffer from BuffaloSomeday.com talking about his website, his book, and a little AFC East and Buffalo Bills football. You're listening to 87 Live on 87 Sports Fans Radio.
Don't have to sacrifice. We don't have to change our ways. Just keep rolling on and on. time keeps rolling like a snowball. Faster and faster as it goes downhill. The youth you thought would never end it all. Oh, how you wish you could make the time stand still. And all the dreams you had protected, you tucked them away up on a shelf. Well, it seems they felt neglected and ran off with somebody else. My brain is getting numb, my heart is getting weak, my body's getting old. I'm having trouble speaking, and my eyes can't make believe that they still see. I point to all of this, I'm walking away, I'm leaving no regrets. The end begins today, 'cause it's inconsequential life, it's killing me. Feels like I'm lost with no direction. Feels like I'm blowing in the wind. And this is the end. My brain is getting numb, my heart is getting weak, my body's getting old. I'm having trouble speaking, and my eyes can't make believe that they still see. I point to all of this, I'm walking away, I'm leaving no regrets. The end begins today, because it's inconsequential life, it's killing me. It's killing me. Yeah, it's killing me. It's killing me. Clearly something foul has got a hold of me, pin me to the ground and sink its teeth in me, injecting and infecting every vein with hateful venom, and it slowly took control of my thoughts and ambitions, my love for musicians. And you think you're the antidote, you've got it all wrong, 'cause it's got this hold on me. And girl, you took a toll on me. Surely Dr. Jekyll wasn't always mad. Once upon a time he was a nice young man.
You're listening to 87 Live on 87 Sports Fans Radio. 585-633-7487. The email, once again, is youguysuck@87sportsfans.com. Special guest on the line, but first I want to talk to you all about CG Imaging. You guys may hear us talk about that and just wonder, what the heck are these guys talking about? What CG Imaging does is bring your ideas to life, and they do that with 3D realistic animation. Say you're trying to pitch an idea to your boss, and your drawings and your words just aren't doing the trick. Go to CG Imaging. Maybe you're trying to sell something to a client, and you're trying to show that client what your product will look like in their space. CG can make that happen totally artificially, but in absolute realism. Maybe you're starting a business and you need a logo. They designed our logo, and they designed the header for our website. So go to their website, cg-imaging.com. CG Imaging, virtually creating reality. And now we are joined by Carl Pfeiffer. Carl runs the website buffalosomeday.com. He is now a published author with a new book titled Someday. Carl, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Why don't you give everybody a quick rundown? What's the website all about? And then what's the book all about?
Well, first the website. Once I finished the book, I was approached about starting a website because I've even though I wrote almost a 300-page book about the Bills, I have a lot more to say about the Buffalo Bills than just what I wrote in the book. So this is just a vehicle to allow me to just talk about the Bills. I talk a lot about their history, but I also talk about current events. And it's linked with QueenCitySports.net, which is a website that also writes about all Buffalo sports, the Sabres, the Bisons, the Bills. And I'm the Bills writer for that site. So between those two sites, I kind of am able to scratch the day-to-day Buffalo itch I have. So if you're interested in Bills history or you're interested in a fan's take on the current status of the Bills, then that's a site I'd ask you to go take a look at.
Sweet, thanks. And is there a link on the site for them to purchase the book?
There is. There's a preview for the book. I put about the first 15 pages of the first chapter on the book, which is a preview, and then at the end of that, there's a link where you can buy the book. Right now, it's available on the publisher's website, which is lulu.com, and I'm told it's going to be released to Amazon and Barnes & Noble hopefully this weekend. If not, then it'll be next week.
Sweet. So now we do. I mean, we broadcast out of upstate New York. The Buffalo Bills are in our backyard, but we personally, both of us, are actually Bears fans.
Another struggling, heartbreaking team.
I don't know over the last 30 years which one is really more tortured. But see, when we did our draft preview, we were actually thinking of when the Bills came up. We were actually thinking of how we thought we were trying to guess how they would screw it up. That's kind of like the attitude that we kind of look at the front office up there. But so being a Bills fan, now, having enough experience, gumption to write about being a Bills fan, what are your most painful? We'll start off. We'll start with the negative. What are your most painful memories as a Bills fan?
Well, I mean, obviously, Well, I will tell you, there's two games. I grew up in the late 70s, early 80s. I graduated from high school in 83, and through my entire childhood, the Bills were horrible. Even when O.J. was running for 2,000 yards, the Bills were usually doormat. And then all of a sudden, Chuck Knox arrived and had built a playoff team when I was a sophomore in high school. And actually, it built a very good team. If you remember the Bermuda Triangle defense, Fred Smirlis, Jim Haslett, and that crew, which was the number one defense in the league. The first heartbreak I had as a Bills fan was the San Diego playoff game after the 1980 season, because we had probably the best defense in the league, and that's a game that we had been winning right up until the fourth quarter. And if anybody from my generation remembers, that was a game where Joe Ferguson was trying to play on one leg and just couldn't get it done. And our backup was a guy by the name of Dan Minucci, who didn't even belong in a football uniform, let alone on an NFL roster. So as a sophomore in high school, that was the first heartbreak I had, which really is what I lead the book off with. But obviously Norwood's wide right has to win the gold medal of heartbreak. That was the one Bills team that was clearly the best team in the NFL. And to lose to the Giants and to lose in such fashion, I still have visions of. I was actually with my company in the Army. We were all Bills fans because we were from Buffalo, and all of us pacing around in stunned disbelief that we had not won this game. I mean, when the kick left Norwood's foot, we all said, "Well, here we go. We're going to win." And we're still waiting. I still watch the highlights waiting for it to go through the uprights. So, that was much more painful than the other Super Bowls because in some cases, those Cowboy teams were better than us, and as was the Redskin team. But that first Super Bowl team was the best team in the NFL and had no business losing that game.
Well, that's it. And you hit the nail on the head because a lot of people don't remember how good that Bills team was that year. The Giants had it.
Especially, I'm sorry if I interrupt you, but they were firing on all cylinders at the right time because they blitzkrieged the playoffs. I mean, they destroyed Miami and they absolutely dismantled a pretty good Los Angeles Raider team. I mean, just destroyed them. And if you recall, the Giants were very much the underdog to the 49ers. So when the Giants beat the 49ers, it was a foregone conclusion that we're the Super Bowl champs. The Giants aren't even going to give us a game. And so that also made it all the more, heartbreaking was this is a game that was supposed to be over at halftime.
Right. And forget about the whole Hostetler angle, too.
Exactly.
They weren't even
Phil
with
Simms being
Phil
out.
Simms, yeah.
Well, and, I can live that game play by play. I mean, when Leon Seal sacked him, if you recall, in the first half and just put his entire 280 pounds into him, I remember sitting there with everybody from the tank company I was with going, well, Hostetler's dead. And I think it was somebody like Jeff Rutledge or something or Matt Cavanaugh or somebody like that was the third string. And Hostetler got up. The other thing is when we got the safety on Hostetler and Bruce Smith grabbed his wrist, how does he hang on to that ball? And it's not a touchdown.
Right.
Hostetler drops that ball in the end zone and it's a touchdown instead of a safety. The jail breaks on. Game's over. It's almost as if God did not want us to win. God intervened to defeat us.
Right. So now, are you one of those fans? Because every time the Buffalo Bills gets brought up to a casual fan, the first thing that they throw out is, "Oh, you couldn't win Super Bowl. You have 4 chances. You're 0 for 4 in a row." And Bills fans invariably throw back, "Well, it took a lot to get there." Where do you sit on the fence on that argument?
I'm somewhere in the middle. I think that the team, as you put it in context, and as you start to get, the guys are starting to retire. Some of them are starting to go into the Hall of Fame. I think you look back and go, boy, that was some accomplishment. I'm also of the mindset that the teams that they lost to, the Redskins and those 2 Cowboy teams, especially that first game, Super Bowl 27, they probably didn't even belong on the field with them. I mean, the Cowboys were so much better than them in Super Bowl 27 in every facet that it has to be put into context. And they were playing in a very weak AFC East, and you could count on probably 6 wins a year, because they had so much superior talent to the Jets, the Colts, and the Patriots at the time. So I'm somewhere in the middle. I mean, listen, to pick yourself up off the mat and get back at it and get back to the Super Bowl, that is an accomplishment. But they lost 4. And that's one of the reasons why I wrote the book, was we have never hoisted the championship trophy. We have never had the parade down Elmwood or Delaware in Buffalo. And that is a disappointment.
And just looking at the stats on footballreference.com, that 1990 team, so obviously the Super Bowl was played in 91, so that 1990 team was 1st in points, 6th in yards, 6th in defensive points, and 8th in defensive yards. That's just...
Yeah, I mean, that was a machine, and it should have won the Super Bowl. I'm also a conspiracy theorist that says, had they won Super Bowl 25, would they have gone back to 3 straight after that, or would they have gotten complacent? Would they have not? Because I mean, obviously, so many teams that win it don't get back and don't win it again. So I often wonder, had they won Super Bowl 25, would we have seen them in another Super Bowl? I would argue yes, and probably would have won one of them because they would have gotten over the hump.
Absolutely. So now, what's your most glorious memory as a Bills fan?
Most glorious memory would be the AFC Championship game. Well, two. AFC Championship game against the Raiders, because I remember sitting there and going, I cannot believe after watching this team since I've been 12 years old that they're going to the Super Bowl. You know, I was a kid that grew up in the 70s, and the Super Bowl rotated between the Cowboys, the Steelers, and the Raiders. And those were the teams that seemed to be in it every year, with maybe the 49ers occasionally. And I just remember as a teenager saying, well, it's always going to be the Cowboys or the Steelers. And for the Buffalo Bills to actually be going to the Super Bowl, playing in the big game after that Raider game, is probably my fondest memory, closely followed by the AFC Championship game against the Broncos that they won 10-7. Carlton Bailey intercepted the pass. That's a fond memory for me because I was at that game. And that's probably the most important Bills game I was ever at, because obviously it was a championship game going to the Super Bowl. But the fondest, the gold medal is beating the Raiders and you know, going to the Super Bowl. I just remember sitting there going, I can't believe it's actually the Bills that are going.
I'm surprised that the comeback game wasn't in one of your top two.
Well, I mean, we'd been to a few Super Bowls. That was exciting. And I just, you know, it was an exciting game, but for me, it wasn't, you know, we had been to a couple Super Bowls, and that was a surreal game. I just remember, and I was a newlywed at the time, and you know, I remember sitting there with my wife, and I got a quick story about this. If you remember, that game was blacked out in Buffalo. It hadn't sold out in time.
Yep, I remember.
So we were actually watching the game in a bar, and when it went to up 35-3, I said to my wife, my then new bride, I said, well, let's get out of here. But the bar was so crowded that we literally could not get to the door. And a waitress walked by and said, you guys want another beer? And I said, sure. You know, it'll clear out of here in a minute. And by the time we finished that beer, it was 35-24, because, you know, Reed had caught his first touchdown pass after the BB touchdown and followed by the onside kick. And I said, well, we're not going anywhere now. But had that bar been any less crowded, I would not have seen the game.
See, I remember it being blacked out. I was home. I was only 15 at the time. Or no, I was 15 or 16 at the time. I don't remember. Anyway, I was home. And Channel 10, the local station, was running a little ticker along the bottom of whatever they were showing. Yeah. And I saw it go, you know, 35-3. And I'll admit it, at certain aspects, certain teams, I'm a hater. And I was laughing hysterically. that the Bills, because I had so many friends that were such passionate Bills fans, and you know, it was before cell phones and text messaging and all that. But if it had been today, I would have been blowing everybody's phones up with just harassing text messages. But I was laughing, and then I'm watching the ticker, and it just keeps getting closer and closer, and I'm going, oh my God, are you kidding me?
You're thinking it's a typo, right? This can't be happening.
I was like, come on, it's 35-3, and then I was like, you know, wanting the game to be on so that I could like see if somebody was actually going to get fired on the field on the Houston sideline, because it was that unbelievable. But
well, I write in the book about that game from the standpoint that I tie that game to the Music City Miracle. Because I have this crazy theory that, you know, because the book's meant to be funny, and it's like you and I are having a conversation in a bar is the way the book's written. Mm-hmm. And what I say in the book is that the football gods had paid the Bills back, because if you recall, the Oilers kind of unraveled after that game as a franchise, and they ended up in Tennessee. I mean, that game for the Houston Oilers was the first nail in their coffin for leaving Houston. And so when the Music City Miracle happened with the throwback, the playoff game in '99, I said the football gods had revisited the Bills and even the score, because the Houston Oilers as a franchise basically started to die after that afternoon in Buffalo. And you know what I say in the book is the Bills really have not recovered from the Music City Miracle yet. I mean, it's been 13 years and counting. That was the last playoff game the Bills were in.
Wow.
And we've only had one winning season since '99. So I said, you know, I say in the book, I said, you know, the football gods even the score in Nashville for what had happened in Buffalo during the comeback game.
God, when you put it like that that was the last playoff game that they were in, the beginning of the end of the Wade Phillips era. When you think about it, how far back ago that was.
Well, it ended Wade Phillips in Buffalo, and it also, for all intent and purposes, ended Rob Johnson's career. because what I argue in the book is, Rob Johnson essentially had that game won, and that was a whole controversy with Flutie because Wade Phillips started Johnson after Flutie had played most of the year. And Johnson had won that game. And if you recall, Tennessee went on a little bit of a run because they had beaten a young Indianapolis team where Peyton Manning was only in his second year. And it could be argued that Buffalo would have won that game against Indianapolis, and then they would have ended up in the Super Bowl against a pretty vulnerable Dallas Cowboy team, because that's the Cowboy team that had beaten the Steelers. But really, Neil O'Donnell had beaten the Steelers. So I argue in the book that had the Bills won that game, they probably would have at least ended up in the AFC Championship game, and that would have solidified Rob Johnson probably as a starter for 5 years. Because he clearly would have won the fans over. If he had won 2 or 3 playoff games, or, it got him in the Super Bowl, win or lose, I mean, he's our quarterback for 5 or 6 years. And instead, 3 years later, he's out of football.
Wow.
For the most part.
So, yeah, where were you on the fence back in the day? Were you a Flutie guy or a Rob Johnson guy?
I was a Flutie guy. I soured on Rob Johnson pretty quick. I thought he was injury prone. I didn't like the fact that he had some pretty lousy things to say about Buffalo. Didn't appear to want to be there. And when Flutie took over, he went 9-3 and got us in the playoffs. He salvaged the season, and in a lot of ways, Flutie probably saved the franchise, because if you remember, that's when the lease was getting ready to expire. And we had to sell the $11 million worth of luxury boxes to get the lease extended and get the state funding for the improvements. And sales started to stagnate because the team started out 1-3 with Rob Johnson. All of a sudden, Flutie shows up. We go on a 9-3 run, and we meet the goal for luxury box sales, and we end up in the playoffs. So I for a while was a pretty big Flutie fan.
I love the Flutie Flakes. It's one of my favorite cereals.
Of course.
Now, listen, I also say, and I've said on my website, Flutie was a flash in the pan. I mean, he was not going to be the long-term answer to anything, because at the end of the day, he was 5'7" with a pretty good arm.
Right.
And that's not going to take you very far.
Mm-hmm.
Don't tell the people in Calgary that.
Oh, I know. Or don't tell anybody in Boston College.
Yeah.
It's like, it's kind of like the Tebow thing. I live in Florida now, so if you talk to any of the Gator fans about Tebow, don't tell them he can't play in the NFL as a quarterback. They'll argue you right into the ground.
All right, so now going forward, the Bills obviously have struggled since the Music City Miracle. Haven't made the playoffs since. What did you think of the E.J. Manuel pick, where they picked him?
I'll be honest with you, I didn't like it. Well, here's what I did like. I like the fact that Ryan Nassib is not a Buffalo Bill.
Right.
And what I was concerned about was Marrone coming out of Syracuse was going to pick his guy, or they were going to feel some pressure to pick him. So I'm glad that they appeared to have made an objective assessment of the quarterbacks available. But I've seen a lot of E.J. Manuel down here in Florida. I've been down here for 3 years now. And I've said this a couple times. I've written about it. What E.J. Manuel was as a senior was pretty much what he was as a sophomore. And he didn't improve and he didn't evolve very much. And I never saw him win a big game. And what I've argued is, Florida State was in the national championship hunt last year, right up until that North Carolina State game where they lost 17-16. And what I go back to is E.J. Manuel didn't get his team in position to score a single point in the second half. Mm-hmm. And if they win that game, then they're in the national championship hunt, and they're probably playing Alabama or Notre Dame because they're the number 2 team in the country instead of where they ended up going. I think they went to the Orange Bowl last year. And so, I think he's a big kid. I think he's got a strong arm. I think he can run around a little bit. He's a good athlete. Seems to be a good kid. I mean, there's no off-field issues. But on the field, I'm a little hesitant. But I think he's going to be our quarterback given the way camp's unfolded.
Yeah.
Well, as long as, there's no slippery mats, who knows? Who knows
yeah, he seems to be able to get from the locker room to the field without hurting himself.
So one last thing before we let you go, what is your expectations for this Bills team this year?
My expectations are in the context of what's going on in the division. And I've compared this year's AFC East to 2010's NFC West that Seattle won with a 7-9 record. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't think you're going to be able to win this division with a 7-9 record because the Patriots still play in this division. But the Patriots took some serious hits in the offseason besides the fiasco with Hernandez. Mm-hmm. They lost some players, especially on offense, and Tom Brady just turned 36. So I think the Patriots are vulnerable. Now, I think they're also like a vampire, and they're not dead until they're dead. So I'm not willing to make any bold predictions that they're going to fall off a cliff. I think they're getting closer to it. I think that the Jets are a mess, and I think I actually wrote about the Miami Dolphins this week, and I think the Miami Dolphins are a mess. Buffalo has quietly accumulated some talent that all could come together and could yield a 9-7 record, and especially opening with the Patriots without Gronkowski, maybe steal a win from New England to open the season. If all that comes together and we get any kind of quarterback play, any kind of serviceable quarterback play with C.J. Spiller in the backfield, I think we could be a 9-7 team. And I think 9-7 means we're playing important games in December and possibly playing for what is a pretty weak division.
Mm-hmm.
Doug Marrone, Coach of the Year.
Yeah, I do like the Doug Marrone hire.
Yeah.
Because he took Syracuse, which was on its deathbed. I mean, it was on life support, and he brought that program back to life. And I think a lot of what he did in Syracuse will transition nicely into what he's going to have to do in Buffalo. And he was successful doing it. So, I mean, if Bills improve by 3, 4, 5 wins, I think we are talking Coach of the Year.
Wow. It's from where they were, for them to turn around, even to that would be a tremendous job by that coaching staff. And
you guys are telling me I'm down in Florida, so I'm watching on the internet, and I'm talking to some guys that I work with that are up there. But I also think that there's a different vibe with this coaching staff. I think I think that there's some more accountability. I think that they're young. I think they're enthusiastic. I think they're bringing some fresh ideas. Because if you look at the last 2 coaching staffs the Bills have had, I mean, they've just been, what I term rewash laundry. Mm-hmm. I mean, Chan Gailey, Dick Duran. I like the fact that we're bringing in some guys that have got some fresh ideas, some energy, some enthusiasm, and it remains to be seen. But I'm pretty positive of what I've seen so far.
And Marrone has a little bit of political capital, even though Syracuse didn't light the world of college football on fire by any stretch of the imagination. But Marrone brings his experience with New Orleans with him, so he doesn't strike me as one of those rah-rah guys that tries to get in everybody's face and yell and scream and everything like that. But so he may be the right personality with the right background for a team like this. I mean, there are some bright spots. Stevie Johnson, C.J. Spiller. If you can figure out what to do with Mario Williams to make him productive again, Marcel Darius is a big body on the line. Manny Lawson coming over from Cincinnati, in the linebacker crew this year. And the secondary, I think, is a little underrated.
I do too. I like Stephon Gilmore a lot. Yeah. I watched him play down here in the SEC, and I think he's got the potential to be a shutdown corner. And, that helps your defense tremendously.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Carl, thank you for joining us tonight. Carl Pfeiffer, follow him on Twitter, @BuffaloSomeday, that is SOMEDAY. The website is buffalosomeday.com. And, Carl, give everybody the website of the publisher where they can find your book.
Yeah, my publisher is lulu.com. And if you Google Someday, Carl Pfeiffer, it'll come right up. And I think it's going to be on Barnes & Noble and Amazon this weekend.
All right, thanks for joining
us.
When we come back, Jim Saranteas joins us for our trip around the NFL. You're listening to 87 Live on 87 Sports Fans Radio.
run away. Never gonna take the tears of bad defeats to run away from Peter and to reach the street. So you're collecting dreams and trying to find the rules of play. The trouble comes around, so you just never try to find an easy way. Life is just for real, don't try to run, you know. Sometimes things gonna change the way. You just remember you are the one. Still want you to slow far away. I know. Can't walk away from the things you say, yeah, the price you pay for love. Can't walk away from the things you say, yeah, the price you pay for love. No, can't walk away from the things you say, yeah, the price you pay for love. Can't walk away from the things you say, yeah, the price you pay for love. Can't walk away.
You know what that music means. It's time for our favorite 20 minutes to 40 minutes to an hour of the week. It's
20
NFL
minute-ish.
Yeah, we always start out with the best, most professional and efficient intentions. It just doesn't really end up that way.
Yeah, you pretty much say that about our entire show, though. So
Yeah, it's part of our charm.
yeah, absolutely.
Welcome back to the show. Jim Saranteas at The Fantasy Greek on Twitter, the website, thefantasygreek.com, here for his weekly NFL stop. Jim, thanks for returning.
Keith and Steve, thanks for having me as usual. This should be an interesting show. I think we have more out of division news to talk about that than in division news.
Yeah, today, if you're following the schedule, the AFC West fantasy football preview coming up a little bit later, but we would be remiss if we tried to talk NFL and didn't even bring up or address or get into the rash of injuries that has seemingly overtaken the training camp scene today. And we'll start with the New Orleans Saints and losing their, everyone expected a whole bunch from Joe Morgan. When I first heard that he was hurt, I thought, well, that's really expected because he's been out of baseball for so long. What was he thinking, trying to make a comeback?
I waited for that, and
so
by golly, you didn't let me down.
sorry. So, Jim, when you look at the wide receiver depth chart in the New Orleans Saints, what's the impact there?
Well, it's a wide open competition right now between Nick Toon and Kenny Stills. Depending how you want to look at this, it's really hard to say, who's going to be the winner of this competition. And you know what? I can't leave out Steve Breston, who the Saints actually just signed in anticipation of the negative news on Joe Morgan. So he's in the mix as well.
By the way, just to throw out a little side note here, ourlads.com already has Steve Breston in their depth chart.
Oh, they do.
It's just fantastic.
It is absolutely fantastic. Actually, Our Lads is who we get our depth charts through. So if you come to our site and go to our depth charts, they actually link right into Our Lads.
Yeah, I just started tinkering around with exploring the site last week, but I'm already off topic. So where were you going with that?
Oh, well, where I was going to go with it was, it's a wide open competition. Here's the thing. Kenny Stills is the guy that right now seems to be the player that people are talking about the most. He's getting a lot of action with Drew Brees. He seems to be playing well. If you want to compare him to Nick Toon, since they're both the youngest players among the three, Stills is a rookie, but he came out of college ranked higher than Nick Toon. He's faster than Nick Toon, if you want to look at that, 4.3540 versus a 4.54. The numbers are quite similar, but Kenny Stills, while he needs developmental time, he just seems to be a more together wide receiver than Nick Toon. Nick Toon still sort of, some of the things that knocks against him coming out of college, included lacking quickness and explosion. But he is the kind of player that can get some yards after the catch. So then you've got Steve Breston, who, his best season was with the Cardinals. It wasn't with the Chiefs. And that season was back in 2008 when he had 77 receptions for 1,006 yards. A couple seasons ago, he had 785 yards, but last season, he barely touched the ball. He had 7 receptions. So I really do think this is an open competition. I could see the Saints going with the person with the most experience, but I if the talent's there, Kenny Stills could be the guy. But, God, it's so hard to see a rookie in this offense right now, and I'd rather just sit back, wait and see. And you know what? Heck, as long as we've got 3 wide receivers there, we might as well throw Devery Henderson back in the mix. As you might know, he's currently signed by the Redskins, but it's not official that he's going to make the team. So if he's on the street, they could always bring him back.
Mm-hmm.
I tell you, though, this makes my question of you to end our show last week about the difference between Lance Moore and Miles Austin. I almost was foreshadowing with that question last week because now Lance Moore's value, I think, has gone up quite a bit.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. I mean, the Saints offense has a place for 1 to 2 receivers that will break up the field in order to open up everything underneath for Marcus Colston and Jimmy Graham. So, Lance Moore, I think you're absolutely right. If anybody took a little bump up in value, it's definitely him.
Mm.
I'm trying to find Kenny Stills' his combine performance, but he ran a 4.3840, but yet somehow got the knack that he doesn't have top-end speed. So read into it whatever you want. But for that passing attack, he can get open, but it remains to be seen whether his skill set will translate into the NFL game. But no, I guess it kind of has to.
Well, yeah, here's the thing. Kenny Stills, if you actually look at his college numbers, I mean, he was a guy that I think he averaged 11 yards per catch. That suggests he's a short yardage guy. not a guy that you want running down the field necessarily. But like you said, I mean, they're going to have to step up and they're going to have to do it. I mean, one way or another, this is not going to hurt the value of Marcus Colston. It's not going to hurt the value of Jimmy Graham. As Steve pointed out, it looks like it will help Lance Moore. And now the real question is which one of these players is going to sort of in a sleeper sort of way break out and maybe do something for fantasy football players. And I only say maybe because I went back and I looked at Robert Meacham's numbers and Devery Henderson's numbers, and Robert Meacham, even in his last season with the Saints, which was 2011, the best he put up was 630 yards and 5 of the 6 TDs, which is fine if you want a wide receiver 4 or wide receiver 5, somebody to put in for a bye week or an injury, but that's certainly not a top fantasy football draft pick. And if you look at Devery Henderson's numbers last year, they weren't very good at all. It was 316 yards and 1 TD. I think I played him one week and I actually got lucky. He got the 1 TD for me. So, things like that can happen in your favor, but if you try to play them any other week, it probably blew up in your face.
There's no such thing as luck in fantasy football. There's just foresight and somebody else's fault.
Well, what there is having some skill to look at this situation and say exactly what I said, which is, look, this is a wide open race. And I know there's going to be people saying different things about which one of these guys is going to win. And I think ultimately you have to just see who the winner is.
Agreed. So now move. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, don't draft these guys unless you have to.
Makes sense. Which we'll talk off the air about that draft guide you sent out, which was just fantastic.
We can talk about that at the end, but let's continue.
Let's continue. Moving on, the Atlanta Falcons with a big loss, at least from the way I see it. I'm curious to get your thoughts. Losing right tackle Mike Johnson. What does this do for the new piece of the puzzle with Steven Jackson and Matt Ryan, who maybe he's not proving people wrong or whatever, but until he manages to actually get that team that everyone keeps waiting to make to the NFC Championship, until they actually get there, I've got question marks.
Well, actually, I believe they got there last year.
Were they in the NFC Championship game last year?
Who was that?
The Falcons. The Falcons and 49ers in the championship game last year?
Yeah, because the Falcons had the large halftime lead and then blew it in the second half.
Why did I blank out on that? Well, then I still don't like Matt Ryan. Anyway, go ahead.
Again, that's why I'm here. So, no. So anyway, I mean, this is not a good thing at all. This was one of the worst things that could possibly happen, especially after they let Tyson Clabo go in free agency. You know, I think the thought was we'll save some cap space. I don't understand why they released him. Maybe there was a personal issue. Maybe they wanted to work in Mike Johnson, who all indications was very qualified to be the starting right tackle. But now that he's gone, I mean, we've got a battle between Lamar Holmes and Alex Savoy. Lamar Holmes was a third-round draft pick in 2012, and to be honest with you, the Falcons actually reached on this guy. He was a 2-year starter for Southern Mississippi State, and all indications are that he's a developmental player, or was a developmental player, because his main issues were blocking. So we're about to see whether or not, you know, I mean, they were that confident that he could be a quality backup real soon here, because Alex Savoy, he was an undrafted free agent out of McNeese State, and I tried to find some information on the guy, and I just couldn't, at least not on such short notice. So I can't really comment except to say that, you know, there's no depth there. And the nice thing for the Falcons is there are some free agents available that they could immediately bounce on, and probably the leading candidate, the most qualified, and the player that they should be able to pick up and put right into the lineup and hopefully not skip a beat is Winston Justice, former right tackle of the Colts. You know, otherwise they'd be looking at Jared Gaither, former left tackle for the Chargers. There were issues that pertain to him. For those of you that can't remember, he had a huge payday, but not last season, right before last season, and last season basically he just didn't do a good job at all on that offensive line. And other guys available, Sean Locklear from the Giants, but last we heard he was hurt, and nobody's shown any interest in him, at least none that I'm aware of. Jamal Brown from the Redskins, Frank Omagile from the Seahawks, as well as, Jason Sloy, you can consider him a guard or tackle, but, I mean, he was formerly of the Raiders. I think Winston Justice is the way to go if they can sign the guy.
Well, I'm going to call you out on one name that you just mentioned, and that was Frank Omagile.
Thank you.
Because when he was a Chicago Bear, he was referred to as Frank, oh my God, how is he starting? Okay, the guy's atrocious. But anyway,
yeah.
The only good thing that I can see from the Falcons' standpoint is that Steven Jackson is a between-the-tackles runner. Yes, he can receive the ball out of the backfield, but that would seem to affect Jacquizz Rodgers more, being that kind of scat-back type. So if Lamar Holmes can't block, I think obviously it definitely affects plays to the right side of the field, especially stretch plays and sweeps and tosses, whatever. I don't really remember them doing a whole lot of that with Michael Turner last year, but that was for obvious reasons. Steven Jackson could do a little bit more of the stretch plays, but primarily he's built to be a north-south runner. So,
yeah, but you also look, for his entire career, he's excelled behind a cookie-cutter offensive line at St. Louis. So he's got the experience on how to run in a situation where, you know, maybe you have to make an extra move or lower your shoulder and knock someone over. So as far as a running back to pick up, I think they couldn't have picked up a better back for this kind of situation.
You know, I don't disagree with you, Steve, but here's the main concern. Well, one is obviously pass blocking for Matt Ryan. I mean, this offense is built to throw the ball.
Yeah.
And if Matt Ryan doesn't have the time, that's never a good thing. But if we're going to talk about Steven Jackson, he has played behind a cookie-cutter offensive line. But that's generally done for him is it's relegated him to being around an 1,100-yard all-purpose running back with, 4 to 6 TDs, where right now all the estimations are that he should be in the 1,300 to 1,500 and potentially up to 10 TD running back. Now, I'm not saying he's not going to do that in this offense. I'm just saying that this is a huge blow for the Falcons, especially after letting go a very good right tackle and not having any depth to speak of at that spot. And even if we wanted to talk about another offensive lineman that's available, that I don't know that he could play right tackle, but you never know. Jeff Hagartner out of the Panthers, he was a fellow that was just released, mainstay of that offensive line, and quite frankly, everybody was stunned that that he was let go, and there's no indications why. So, I mean, that's another guy that they could pick up maybe and plug into that offensive line to protect really what is their biggest asset on this team.
He insulted Cam Newton's puppies. That's why he was released.
Who did?
Hangartner. I'm kidding. Did you see that picture of Cam Newton that came out? He's holding two little poodles or whatever.
Not at all, I'm sorry to say.
No, I tweeted it because I said, somebody make a Vic joke. Come on, somebody.
Oh, God.
But nobody did. Probably for good reason.
And we're all grateful for that.
Probably for good reason.
Thank God the show's not on in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
Yes.
All of America thanks God for that, too, Jim.
There's a reason we have this time slot.
By the way, I noted we've got, I think, 4 or 5 live listeners. So if there are, I mean, feel free to call in.
Oh, yeah. I keep forgetting to give out the phone number. 585-633-7487. 585-633-7487 if you want to pick the Fantasy Greek's brain. A lot of drafts coming up. This is the time. Steve knows because he's probably frantically studying when, opposed to me who kind of can sit back and just relax. Anyway.
It's rough.
You like how
Pray I don't win. Pray I don't win.
You like how I slid that in there?
No, I don't like how you slid that in.
Did you set your keepers yet? Anyway, moving on. The other big injury happened to be with the San Diego Chargers, which kind of leads us into our AFC West fantasy preview. So why don't we start with the Chargers? First, let's talk about the injury to wide receiver Denario Alexander. What does this do for Phillip Rivers and the San Diego Chargers offense?
Well, I can tell you what it does for me in my fantasy football discussion with you is it really takes off the table the player that I thought was the most promising in fantasy football, and that was Denario Alexander. As everybody may know, he blew out his ACL today. I believe it wasn't the left knee, it was the right knee. I don't know how many times he's injured that one. I think the left he's had at least 4 procedures on. So this is not good for a fella who is coming out of his 4th season as a pro. And quite frankly, I think he's missed a majority or close. I want to say he's missed 20-plus games in the past 3 seasons, so that's not good. But he's coming off such a great 2012 where he played in the final 10 games, I believe it was, that he played the entire season. He was going to easily get over 1,000 yards, and I want to say around 7 or 8 TDs. I was able to pick him up in a couple of my leagues, and he was just great. I mean, he scored, it seemed, every game that he played in. So I had really high hopes for him. I had him as a solid wide receiver, too. And people were drafting him. He was available in like round 7, round 8. So if you did what you should do this year, which is earmark 3 of your top 5 picks and certainly 3 of your top 6 picks for a running back, he was a guy that you could have, grabbed in round 6 or 7 as a second wide receiver and be like, hey, look at this. We got first round quality. Now that he's not there, the main benefit, there's an array of players now that stand to benefit from this situation. And I think it might be lost in some of the initial reactions to this injury. You've got Malcolm Floyd, who certainly is getting up in age. He's got his own injury issues, but he's generally speaking a guy that could put up 1,000 yards receiving, 5 to 7 TDs when he's completely healthy. You've got Antonio Gates, who I know has been a complete disappointment the last few seasons and whose production has actually steadily declined over the last 2 or 3. But he's coming back, and so far reports suggest that he's fine. In other words, there's been no bad news, no good news. He's just there. And that's not a bad thing. We know he can catch the ball, and the Chargers are going to have a nice little short passing game. That should also benefit Vincent Brown, who's, I believe, entering his 3rd year. He missed his entire sophomore season due to a broken ankle. But again, last year before the injury, he looked great. He looked fast. He's catching balls. This year, the reports out of camp are positive. He's catching not just everything in sight, but he's catching them when it's contested. So this is a guy that I right now like as a sleeper coming out of the Chargers, a guy that you want to get right towards the end of your draft as potentially an injury replacement and a guy that could end up starting weekly if the offense takes a step forward. But, just like anything else, the Chargers have their own offensive line issues that will challenge them. And another player, and why this is so convoluted, is you've got a guy like Danny Woodhead, Danny Woodhead's another guy that can catch the ball and play within the receiving game. So as you look around their field, without Denari Alexander, there's no clear-cut winner in everything that's going on. We've also got Keenan Allen, who's a highly touted rookie, but because he's a rookie, no one's expecting him to step up his first year. And you even got Robert Meacham, who last year was a complete disappointment. They signed him in free agency to a huge contract, and he certainly didn't play up to it. He's another guy that could step up. So right now, the guess would be it's going to be Floyd and Brown as the starters, and Allen or Meacham are going to fight it out for a slot position. I mean, but who knows who really ends up winning here? It's basically a situation that, if you can sort of avoid it, it's not a bad idea.
So now you have a new head coach, Mike McCoy, who was the offensive coordinator for Denver last year. Now, obviously, Peyton Manning is him, and the guys like Brady. They're in and of themselves their own entity. You really can't compare them to anyone. And I would never begin to believe that Phillip Rivers is the next, or is equal to, or in the same neighborhood as Peyton Manning. But do you think this year, regardless of who's throwing the ball, do you think this is an up year for Phillip Rivers? Are you buying or selling him?
I think it's an up year, meaning it'll be better than last year. Last year was just awful. It was a train wreck. Mm-hmm. Phillip Rivers, I forget what it was, he had this really outstanding stat that you could associate with him. It's either 6 or 8 seasons in a row. He passed for, it was either over 4,000 yards per season or 4,500 yards. He had one of the best passer ratings amongst quarterbacks in consecutive seasons. And then last year, just everything imploded. That offensive line was awful. And, I mean, the guy was running for his life, and he couldn't, save himself except to throw the ball to Denari Alexander. So I just don't think it can get any worse than that. Obviously, there's no guarantee. So, but, I wouldn't recommend him as anything more than a solid QB2. And it's a solid QB2 that's going to be on a team that more than likely won't do better than 8-8. But, should have enough offense to stay in most of its games and win half the games. At least that's the hope here. So we'll see what happens.
Where do you see Ryan Matthews?
I have him as a very high RB3. I think the biggest issue with him is the fact that he broke both his collarbones last year. Mm-hmm. I don't know much about how he was treated, but it's very typical that when you break your collarbone, you are very susceptible to re-injuring it. Mm-hmm. The fact that he broke both collarbones last year just doesn't sound good to me. And I think he's going to have a hard time shaking off being injury prone. I think that he is an injury candidate, and I think that the coaching staff's going to try and lighten the load as much as they can. Thus, Danny Woodhead. So, Danny Woodhead is an intriguing guy. I have him as an intriguing player. I have him as the low-end RB3. He definitely has that sort of Darren Sproles-like feel to him. He's fast as can be. I think he could certainly play in the 750 to 900 yard range and 5 to 7 TDs, or slightly better than that. So, if you're looking around you miss out on the sort of elite flex running backs, third running backs. If he's there, he's not a bad way to go. But I would definitely then follow that up with another running back that sort of is just like him, in case he doesn't pan out.
Okay. It's just funny noticing that behind Ryan Matthews is Ronnie Brown on the depth chart right now, and it's like I didn't know he was still alive.
Yeah, that's one of those things you see and you kind of go, yeah, okay. It's Ronnie Brown. What is he, 30, 31, 32?
31 years old. Once you get north of 30, everyone knows.
Even last year, he didn't do that well. When he did get a chance to play, when Ryan Matthews was hurt for most of the season. Mm-hmm. So, he's not the guy. It's Danny Woodhead. If you had to pick one of those two backups, you want Danny Woodhead in fantasy football.
Woodhead is the handcuff.
Absolutely.
And how many handcuff Woodhead jokes can we make anyway?
Oh, God.
I don't know that he's necessarily the handcuff, but he's the guy that I would want on my team that I think every week could potentially touch the ball 10 times. And with each touch, get you 5+ yards and potentially score once each week or every other week.
So you're not even looking at him as like an injury replacement. You're saying like would have like a flex type spot if your league allows?
I mean, like Darren Sproles, basically.
Okay.
That's exactly how I'm looking at him.
Okay.
Darren Sproles is not a handcuff to anybody. He's an entity on his own. So that's how I see him.
I had a girlfriend that once considered an entity unto herself.
Oh, God.
What
was his name again?
That's nice. That was only on Fridays. Anyway.
and I got to tell you, talking about the Chargers, I am really fighting for descriptions of what's going on with that team. Like I said, when we're talking about the AFC West, there's only really one team to talk about. And everybody else, as you work your way down to how you think things are going to look at the end of the season, there's less and less to say about each team as you go down the line in terms of fantasy football.
They're a team that always seems to there's a storm and there's a cloud, but you don't know what the hell's going on with them. And like when they were really good, like the Junior Seau era, the beginning of it, in the early 90s when they made it to the Super Bowl, they just could never seem to put it together. And then they went through a little lull, and then they started to put it all back together, and LaDainian Tomlinson shows up. And they just can't seem to put it all together. And it just always seems to be something keeping them from making that next step. And now with a new head coach who had success in Denver with a future Hall of Fame quarterback, you just don't know if this is it. I like what they've done on the defensive side of the ball. Phillip Rivers, when he is healthy and on, I think he's one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league. But when he's off, he's atrocious. And
I've always looked at him like Jay Cutler. For our team, unfortunately, he's a very why I compare them is they're both very talented, both have awful tempers, and most people consider them just a-holes. And they have all this talent, but they just can't win that game. They cannot get their team. They cannot lead them to the promised land. They just can't.
585-633-7487. That number again, 585-633-7487. So moving down the AFC West, let's talk, to me, is one of the most intriguing teams this year in all of the NFL, and that is the Kansas City Chiefs. New head coach and Andy Reid bringing along his staff. New quarterback and Alex Smith. What do you see in the Kansas City Chiefs this year?
Well, first of all, Andy Reid must be the luckiest guy on the planet because I really do think that he inherited one of the best rosters that was available for a team that wanted a new head coach. Mm-hmm. You couldn't ask for a better situation with a guy like Jamal Charles being pretty much your stud offensive player, Dwayne Bowe being your second, the two guys that people will covet in fantasy football. Jamal Charles certainly a top 8 running back in fantasy, and certainly a first-round draft choice. And then you've got Dwayne Bowe, who the only thing I always caution about, it makes me cautionary about Dwayne Bowe is every year at this time, everybody is talking up Dwayne Bowe, how this is going to be his big season, and he's going to come back from injury, or the quarterback play or the play is going to be better, and he just disappoints people who spend usually a wide receiver 2 pick on him, and it's usually a pretty high pick. I like him more as a high wide receiver 3, and the reason being is I think there's enough players ahead of him as wide receiver 2s to make him a 3, and I don't think anybody should reach for him, even though they definitely have a better schedule than they did last year, and they definitely have a better quarterback, at least so far it looks like it, than they did last year. So those are the two guys that I think are the most the fantasy football draft picks, the players that people will covet whenever their draft is.
Okay. I think this team, I totally agree with your idea that Andy Reid fell into a gold mine. It's just a matter of what form it takes. So now, with Andy Reid, we know what he did with a running back like Brian Westbrook, where we were, you drafted Brian Westbrook knowing that he wasn't going to run the ball as much as he was going to catch the ball. Most of his yards were going to come off screen passes and dump offs and underneath routes and everything like that. He wasn't going to run the ball. He wasn't going to be a banger back. So is Jamal Charles Brian Westbrook?
See, I would say that not exactly. I mean, Jamal Charles is definitely a screen type receiver like Brian Westbrook, but I don't perceive him as a guy like Brian Westbrook. I thought could take a hit, and he could also put out some punishment if he wanted to. And I don't see Jamal Charles that same way. I see him as a pure speedster that if he's in open space, my God, no one can catch the guy.
And then you look down the roster going forward, and they have very high marks for drafting Tyler Bray. Or they didn't draft him. He was a non-drafted free agent, it looks like, on this depth chart I'm looking at. But obviously Green needs a lot of development. But going forward, future somebody, if you're in a dynasty league like we are, obviously not this year, but down the road, somebody that if you're looking for a quarterback to groom a young quarterback, he's somebody that you need to keep your eye on, especially with all those weapons on that team.
Well, I'll take it a step further, and this is one of my two sleepers on this team. I actually think the quarterback to watch out for if Alex Smith stumbles is Chase Daniel. Chase Daniel it's so bizarre. I mean, he was the backup for Drew Brees for, I want to say it was 3 seasons, the past 3 seasons.
Yeah.
He had phenomenal college stats. He was came out of Mizzou. He was a 4-year starter. In those 4 years, he put up 12,515 yards. His senior year, he put up 4,335 yards, 39 TDs, and 18 interceptions. And this kid was Drew Brees' backup. If you watched him play in preseason games, he could run the Saints offense. I always said that if Drew Brees went down to injury, that no one should ever worry about their fantasy players on the Saints because of Chase Daniel. And I'm telling you that the Saints, I'm certain, are kicking themselves, or at least really not happy about the fact that Chase Daniels didn't stick around. But I think they understand it too. In fact, when I saw the Chiefs sign Chase Daniel, I thought to myself, why? You just signed Alex Smith. Why are you signing another guy who's a top free quarterback free agent as a backup? I really thought Chase Daniel was going to find a home with any name teams that are right now, like the Bills, like the Eagles, the Raiders. Those were teams that I thought would go after Chase Daniel and say, we want this guy to be our starter. So I like Chase Daniel. If Alex Smith struggles, I think we're going to see Chase Daniel, and I think he's a guy that could very quickly become fantasy football relevant this season.
What do you think of them?
Well, the fact they went after Daniel, do you think that's a sign that maybe the Chiefs are a little reluctant with Alex Smith, thinking maybe last year's success and 2011, because before that he really kind of struggled, if that's kind of a anomaly or if this is actually who he's going to be from now on?
Steve, I love you because every week you say something that's very astute, and I absolutely agree with you.
Jim, I love you too.
I don't feel comfortable here anymore.
Keith, you're all right, man.
Wow.
We'll raid the fridge and have a cigarette later, Keith.
Wow.
So
just don't feed each other strawberries.
Yeah.
Shut up. I like strawberries.
Well, Keith, you're going to be married soon enough, so you won't have to worry about me anymore.
Really.
If we're not done talking with the Chiefs, I'll talk about one more player, and then unless you guys want to talk about somebody else, I'm kind of done with them.
I want to know what you think of them on defense and special teams too. Before we move on.
I like them on defense and special teams. I think they have. I remember when I sat down and did the defense sort of rankings and looked at everybody. I love their secondary. I think they've got the pieces at pretty much every other position on this team. Could they be better? Some better players, sure, but I mean they look solid. I just don't know. Are we going to get that on the field? That's the only question mark that I have about these guys. I think that they're a solid second defense to pick up in fantasy if you're the kind of person that likes to have a second defense or is required to have one. Otherwise, I'm very comfortable letting them fall into waivers and picking them up when it becomes clear that they are who we think they are. And but the player I'd like to talk about is Niall Davis, only because they're going to need a second running back. This cannot be the Jamal Charles show. He's not built that way. And while Niall Davis, I know there were reports he was having some fumbling issues at training camp. That's of a concern. He was or is the fastest running back in this draft class. I mean, he's definitely at the very top. And he just wasn't very highly ranked because of various issues in terms of his play and I believe off the field. And the Chiefs, for whatever reason, they decided to spend a higher draft pick on the guy. And so he's a guy that, I mean, if you're in a position to take a flyer with your last pick and you need a running back, he's one guy to consider amongst others.
All right. Niall Davis. He was a tremendous jazz musician back in the day.
Miles.
Oh, sorry. I'm all...
But you're ready to talk about the Raiders, aren't you?
Let me ask you, what do you think about the Chiefs' defense?
The Chiefs' defense? I personally think that they have all the pieces from a fantasy standpoint. What are you looking for, really? You're looking for the defenses that are going to come up with turnovers and, whether they be interceptions or fumbles. And like you said, I like their secondary. I think they'll come up with as much interceptions as anybody else in the league, maybe a little bit more, a little ahead of the average. Sacks, I like their defensive line. I like Derek Johnson, Tom Bahali, and even Akeem Jordan, who started with the Eagles, to be a little bit of the kind of the no-name player on this defense that could end up making a decent contribution. Then you look at the other side of it is the special teams and the kick returner Dexter McCluster. One of those guys that, he may not do anything, but he's got the name. You know what I mean?
He's on the all-name team?
Yeah, exactly. You hear Dexter McCluster, and you're like, oh, he could run it back. Regardless of whether he ever does, you're going to associate that. But, I don't have my own personal rankings for defense, but I would probably put them as a top 10 to 15 defense.
See, one problem I have with their defense, though, is kind of the same issue I'm having with their offense is when you get a new coaching staff in and a new system, I mean, all the talent on paper, if the system's wrong, who knows how – I mean, look at the Bills last year. Buffalo Bills, their defense looked – going into the season, everyone's like, oh, it's going to be one of the best defenses in the league. And they just – had all new players and all new cogs, and you did not get with the system, and it failed. So it's kind of – I have high expectations for him, but I'm a little leery just because of how are they going to react to the new coaching staff.
And the other piece to because the kick returning game is that their new special teams coach is Dave Taub, who ran the Bears special teams through the Lovie Smith era, and you saw Devin Hester's success with that. So,
I will say this: I forget where I have the Chiefs. I probably have them in the 15 to 20 range on the Fantasy Greek ranks. But I will say that once you get, I think I have my 10th team as the Packers. Mm. After the Packers, it's harder to look at any one defense and say, oh yeah, you're a shoo-in for the 11th ranked defense. You're a shoo-in for the 12th. You're a shoo-in for the 13th. It just, to me, becomes more unclear which team is going to step up. I know a lot of people have the Rams ranked very high. On paper, this is one of the toughest defenses on paper that anybody could look at. But the reality is one, execution, which I think they could. But two, is the play of their offense going to be a hindrance for them where they're spending too much time on the field and suddenly getting tired, getting injured to the point that things just start falling apart? Mm-hmm. So that's always a concern for me. And I suppose with the Chiefs, it's just, I didn't think they had a bad team last year, and they just were awful.
Yeah.
They were terrible. Mm-hmm. So, it's almost like seeing is believing, and the people that I think you don't need to see to believe for sure is Jamal Charles, and secondarily is going to be just Dwayne Bowe, and just, don't get overhyped on him. Draft him when it seems reasonable and right.
Okay. You make excellent points, Jim. You really do.
Well,
you know what, Jim? I love you because every week you say sorry.
Oh, don't try to involve yourself in this bromance, please, Keith.
All right. Before we move to the Raiders, do you need a break, Jim? Do you want me to take a break, or do you want to press on?
I'll do whatever it is that you want me to do,
All right,
Keith.
let's press on. We got a good rhythm going. We haven't drifted into the bromance too deeply here. The Oakland Raiders next on the old agenda. Oh,
Yeah.
what's going on here? Do you see Matt Flynn putting up any numbers? I mean, he's thrown right now, according to this up-to-date depth chart, Denarius Moore and Rod Streeter, Bryce Butler, and Jerron Kreiner as his top 4 receivers.
You know, I like Matt Flynn. I like him a lot. I was high on him when he left the Packers, thinking that he would go to a team and be a starter. I think he could have been the starter for Seattle, but Seattle found Russell Wilson and probably had one of the best backups in the whole league. Ended up trading him, unfortunately, to a team that decided to rebuild. So we've got a brand new offensive line, I think, for the most part, or one that no one's looking at and feeling fuzzy and warm about. And he's got a receiving core which is generally young. Mm-hmm. A lot of good ones. I mean, there's a lot of good wide receivers on this team. So, for example, Denarius Moore, I like him, but I don't like him any more than I'm not even sure that he's worthwhile as a reserve right now. Like a wide receiver 4, a guy that you're going to put in for a bye week. He may be actually better as that wide receiver 5. Just wait to see how things play out. Mm-hmm. But, I don't see anything wrong with taking his wide receiver 4. I just don't know what we're going to get out of this offense. I mean, even Darren McFadden, who, while he's been a disappointment for many people that have owned him, if you caught him in 2008 and 2010, like I did, I got the most out of him, 13 games. And, he's a guy that could put up 1,700 to 2,000 all-purpose yards and potentially double-digit touchdowns. He's really the only guy to even consider on this team, and I would only consider him as sort of a high to middle RB2. And that's about it. I have a hard time really looking at most of this team and figuring out, well, who is for sure going to do something here and be able to persevere. And, even McFadden disappointed a lot of people last year. I think I had him in one league, and thank God he was my second running back, and Marshawn Lynch was my first. And God bless that I was able to get Marcel Reese when he got hurt. Because if I hadn't, I would have been in dire straits. And it's just one of those things that, at some point, if McFadden falls to you and he's the next best running back, you got to draft him. If it's your time to take a running back. And you're just going to have to wait and see how he plays and how this team plays. Hopefully we'll see something in the preseason. But how much we're going to see, I don't know. It's really strange. It's like the Chargers and you want teams like this to play well, but not everybody can play well. Mm-hmm. And clearly they've made a decision to rebuild the team. Mm-hmm. And even though they're playing for tomorrow, I hate to say it, it's still a team that's playing for today. And, it just what's going to be there today is not this could very well be, if not the worst roster in the NFL, maybe the second, the third, certainly in that bottom 5. And only because it's a lot of young guys, a lot of new players that, maybe they could end up being great players, but it's all wait and see.
I'm looking at their offensive line and their depth, and there is a ton of cast-offs from other teams on here. Alex Barron is listed as the backup left tackle. Andre Gerard is listed as the third center. Mike Brazil from the Texans. Khalif Barnes from the right tackle from Jacksonville. Maybe they can find maybe the coaching staff can put together a scheme. I'm skeptical. But I didn't realize they had signed Josh Cribbs. I didn't realize that that's where he ended up.
Where in the heck have you been, my man?
And apparently I've been asleep at the wheel.
Well, you know what? And then there's Sebastian Janikowski.
Oh, my God. The Polish powder keg. Yeah.
And you know what's hilarious about him? You could sit there and you always see the person that runs out there and gets Sebastian Janikowski. And unless you draft him as one of the last few kickers, it always seems like you don't know what you're going to get this year from the guy. If you catch him, where they just let him kick every single time the offense stalls, great. But the moment he pulls something, It's all downhill.
I would take Sebastian Janikowski if there was like a fantasy professional eating league. Yeah, I would take my chances.
But I mean, if you look at last year, I mean, he was 31 for 34, and he had 9 kicks of 50+.
He's got.
I mean, he wasn't bad. It was definitely. It's always fun to watch him go out there. It's like watching John Daly go on a putting green. You just don't know if it's some fat dude that threw on the uniform by accident and like found a way to sneak out on the field.
But here's the thing, though. Janikowski ended up getting hurt, and people just started dropping him in fantasy leagues after a couple weeks because eventually I think they sat him and brought – I think they did. I'm not positive of this. I'd have to go back and check and see. But I'm pretty sure that at some point he was not in a condition to hit 50-plus yarders. He was at least only allowed to kick, shorter range kicks, and suddenly he became like other kickers from bad teams. So that's my point. I'm not saying you don't spend a top 12 pick on him. I'm just saying I think there's going to be 12 kickers that are probably going to be kickers that people would take ahead of him and feel much more comfortable taking ahead of him.
Mm-hmm. All right, enough talking about this vacuous wasteland that is the Oakland Raiders.
Oh, that was a big word, Keith. I'm impressed.
You like that? Every now and then I bust out the 3-syllable ones just to make sure Steve's still awake.
I'll wait to hear if I could hear the dictionary shut. That's all I'm waiting for.
No. It's all virtual now. It's all on my phone.
Oh, that's true.
The Denver Broncos. New offensive coordinator after losing Mike McCoy to the head coaching gig with the Chargers. They still have somebody named Peyton behind center. New addition with Wes Welker to the offense, who made some interesting comments about Bill Belichick today. But what's your take on the Denver offense?
The number one offense in the NFL. I mean, it should be. I know they had the injuries to their center. Brought in a free agent to hopefully patch that up, but I still think this is the number one offense. I mean, you've got 3 top wide receivers. You got a couple, actually this year, 3 different tight ends that you might see out there. You've got one running back that it looks like will at least be on the field for 2 out of 3 downs, and if he gets his pass protection up, he'll be on every down. And you got the number one quarterback in the league that last year only tossed 11 interceptions. What's impressive about Peyton Manning is he's passed for over 4,500 yards, over 33 TDs the past 3 seasons that he's played.
Wow.
You cannot beat that stat. Mm-hmm. This guy's a top 5 quarterback in fantasy. I have him as number 3 right now. I'm only because, just like anybody else, I'm a little worried about Tom Brady, but not enough to drop Tom Brady out of the top 5. Mm-hmm. I'm confident enough to say Manning's a top 3 guy, and certainly if you get him, you should expect good things from him. I don't know, I think the bigger concern if you're a fantasy footballer is what's the distribution of the offense going to be. I mean, everybody is so high on Monty Ball, and at the same time, in his best days, Willis McGahee was a 1,200 to 1,500 all-purpose yard running back. Mm-hmm. 8 to 12 TDs. And I think that's what you should expect from Monty Ball. He's certainly not going to put up the 22 or 39 that he did in college. That's not how this offense is built. It should be built to pass the ball. In terms of their receiving weapons, I almost think you have to ignore the tight ends. I mean, the tight ends last year, Jacob Tamme and Joel Dreesen, didn't do much of anything. If you played him and actually got a touchdown from him, you were probably lucky. And I know there's been some talk of Julius Thomas stepping up, and that's all good. But again, Julius Thomas may very well step up, and he may very well be a better receiver than their other 2 tight ends. But at the end of the day, I mean, you've got 3 of the best wide receivers on the team, and Demaryius Thomas, Wes Welker, and Eric Decker, and that's where the bigger question is how that's going to distribute. And I think if you look back to the Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne days, are you guys old enough to remember those guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're 36.
I don't want to admit it, but yeah.
Then you remember Dallas Clark and Brandon Stokely were on those teams.
Yeah, Dallas Clark was a pretty productive fantasy tight end, if I remember.
He was, but, again, we've got three tremendous wide receivers, and I find it hard. Well, first of all, I think Demaryius Thomas is Marvin Harrison. I mean, he put up 1,400 yards and 10 TDs last season. There's no reason for him not to do the same thing this season. Welker, you cannot deny the talent. And in fact, Peyton Manning, it seems, has gone out of his way to say great things about Wes Welker, and all reports about their chemistry have seemingly been positive. And we know that Wes Welker works great in offenses with other talented players, as we saw he did with the Patriots with Randy Moss, and then Rob Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez. So it's hard not to see him as an 1,100-plus yard receiver. The guy
I'm sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to say the guy, obviously, that I think people are more concerned about is Eric Decker. Last year, he put up a little bit over 1,000 yards and 13 TDs. I don't see that 1,000 yards coming back, but the TDs, boy, he looks like he could be the TD hawk on this team next to Demaryius Thomas, especially once they get down into the red zone. There seemed to be some chemistry between him and Peyton Manning, so I think he's got a potential to put up numbers more like Dallas Clark did, in that 750 to 850 range, 8 to 10 touchdowns. I just think there's no denying it. So that's how I treat him. Right now I'm seeing Eric Decker being overdrafted almost more like a wide receiver 2, when really he should be a mid to high wide receiver 3.
Just trying to figure out who's like Marvin Harrison, especially towards the last third of his career was really. I don't remember him being the big speed guy to blow the top off a defense. You know what I mean? That was, if my memory serves me correctly, was Reggie Wayne. Correct? You think?
Well, here, let me. You know what? I did the research for you already, Keith.
See, it's perfect. See how I lead you right into these things?
From 2004 to 2006, both Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne put up over 1,000 yards receiving. In 2006, both put up over 1,300 yards receiving. During that time frame, Marvin Harrison was a 10-plus touchdown receiver, and during that same time frame, Reggie Wayne was anywhere from 5 to 12.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's why the concern on Decker is valid if you believe that, and I think rightfully so, that Thomas and Welker fit those roles. I mean, Decker, Stokely and Clark, they were the 750 to 850 guys. And it's not to laugh at that. It's just to say you're not getting the same thing.
Yeah, and Decker ran. I mean, a 40 time is not the end all be all, but his 40 time was in the low 4.5s, so he's not the fastest. I mean, I couldn't watch a guy and tell the difference between a 4.4 and a 4.5 40 personally, but you know what I mean. He seems to be kind of that. He's not going to tear the cover off a defense. Like the Mike Wallaces of the world can do. So. Wes Welker is primarily successful with underneath crossing routes. I mean, that's where New England really made him. Yeah, it was with that kind of almost like a drag route. And if they're using those kind of levels in this offense, it's really just a question of who's open. And you're absolutely right, Jim, about what the distribution is going to break down to. It is really going to make or break these players from a fantasy standpoint.
And that's what I'd have to agree with the concern over any tight ends from Denver because of Wes Welker, who catches a lot of the balls that are typically thrown in a tight end pattern, the crossing routes, the little bit underneath drop-offs. I mean, he's usually that guy. So I know he played with, the two tight ends, Gronk and Hernandez, and they were both as equally successful, but a lot of times they were used more like wide receivers, in my opinion. So when you, like Jim was saying, you have two great, solid wide receivers in Thomas and Decker, then you have Welker underneath. I wouldn't touch a tight end there with a 10-foot pole. That's all I have to say.
I was really trying to come up with a joke for the touching tight ends with 10-foot pole line that you just said.
I think we already scared away any homophobic listeners for tonight.
No. I was just trying to keep the non-explicit iTunes rating, and I just couldn't do it.
Yeah. Broncos defense, I think a lot of people are concerned about the losses of Doomerville as well as Von Miller for the first 4 games. I'm not. I still think this is a top 5 defense. Jack Del Rio is just, if you want to give him anything, he's just got a great defensive mind. I mean, these guys were top 5 last year in sacks with 52, yards, total yards allowed, 290.8. Total points allowed, can there be anything else? 18.1. Interceptions, they were tied for 8th. I think Von Miller's out the first 4 games. You read their schedule and you tell me what you think their record will be. Ravens at home, at the New York Giants, Raiders at home, Eagles at home.
Wow. What is the did I read that Rogers Cromartie was carted off the field?
He hurt his ankle. They say like 2 to 3 weeks.
Oh, okay.
As far as potential injury
It's all right.
timeline.
He doesn't have as many kids as his brother does, so he'll be all right.
Yeah.
High ankle sprain.
Yeah, I believe Denver, though. I mean, they've just got some depth. This team it's stacked.
But you were 100% right about their schedule, though, John. I mean, they have a very friendly schedule. I mean, some of the they play the Raiders twice. They're going to play Philadelphia, who's under new coach and going through whatever growing pains they'll be going through. They're playing against Baltimore to open the season, who's lost pretty much the majority of their team. They got Jacksonville, they got Kansas City a couple times, Tennessee. I mean, other than some games, they got a game against New England, they got a game at Houston. I don't see them really losing this season. I mean, they're playing. They have to go to Dallas, but I still think they're a much better team than the Cowboys are. And their schedule is set up for them to really wipe through the season and set themselves up solidly for home field advantage.
Yeah, I mean, in the draft guide, I've got them going 13-3, and then I point out, but you know what? I could also see them going undefeated. I mean, the schedule, even after those first 4 games, they got the Cowboys. That's a team they can beat. The Jaguars, certainly they could beat them. Play the Colts. That could be a tougher game, I think. Mm-hmm. The Redskins, that could be tougher. They get their bye week, then they go to the Chargers, beat that team. Chiefs, depending how that defense rolls out, that could be a tough game. Then they go Patriots, Chiefs, Titans, Chargers, Texans, Raiders.
See, now if I'm looking at this and I'm just picking off this schedule, both of you guys are going to think I'm crazy, but I can see them losing 4 or 5 games.
I think you're smoking crack.
I'll tell you why. They go to New York and they go to New England. West Coast teams traveling to the East always struggle. Does not matter the difference.
They're mountain.
It's still the same. It's still west to east.
It's Peyton Manning. Never underestimate Peyton Manning. I will always say that. I'm looking forward to that Sunday night game, November 24th at New England. It's absolutely. A night game on NBC.
Absolutely.
That's probably going to be one of the highest rated games of the season.
I say they lose those 2 games and they split with San Diego and the Chiefs just because they're good division rivals.
Wow, you are smoking drugs. Nope. My God, I didn't realize that this time of night you really start losing it.
No, I do.
Hey, listen, how much time do we have left?
About 2 minutes.
Oh, God. All right.
Actually, no, we got 15 seconds. No, I'm just kidding. 5 minutes left.
All right. Well, first off, I wanted to just plug our fantasy football draft guide, which I've sent to you guys. It's 275 pages of advice, ranks, bios, team previews. I know I gave it to you guys. I hope you had a chance to at least skim it over. But it's definitely it's just a ton of information for $20. And what it does is it gets people. You also, by purchasing it, you get into what's called our Skybox membership, where you get some exclusive content. It will be available, we're hoping, by Friday. We're coming up with a new site, which we're very excited about. It'll be very interactive. So I want to let the listeners know about that. Secondly, speaking of the Patriots, I've got to tell you that one of the things to pay attention to on this team is the battle that's going to take place for that second and third wide receiver. Ben Volen has had some excellent reports the last couple of days. And while I love my man Aaron Dobson, it sounds like Josh Boyce is in the mix. And then Kembrell Tompkins is a guy that's name has been mentioned a lot, and he's making some impressions. And the other thing to pay attention to is the tight end battle. It's starting to rookie Zach Sudfeld. out of Nevada. His name's coming up a lot. Apparently, he's practicing with the first teamers, and he's making catches left and right. So that's a situation to monitor.
Wow.
Yeah.
So basically, everybody's in the mix for wide receiver in New England. If I show up if I can get a jersey and a helmet, will they let me practice?
I think they will, actually. And you know what?
Hey, with Tom Brady throwing the ball, you might even be able to catch one or two, Keith.
Hey, getting back to that draft guide, I think I'm like about a fifth of the way through it, and it's outstanding. There's just a ton of information. There's just a lot.
There is a lot of information.
A ton of information. So everybody check that out, thefantasygreek.com. But I'm still looking at this Denver Broncos schedule, and I just want to know who in God's name put them versus Oakland on Sunday Night Football. That's going to be so atrocious. It's going to be such a one-sided contest. I don't understand.
Well, it's an NFL Network game, isn't it?
No, it's on ESPN.
Oh, it is ESPN.
It's a
game?
Sunday night game.
Well, if things turn out the way people anticipated to turn out today, maybe it will shame the Raiders into, setting up their game and building a team. I think, they had to do what they had to do to sort of cleanse themselves of money and set themselves up to have a full array of draft picks. But boy, this team, it's young and it's made up of a lot of guys that, didn't necessarily start on the teams that they were coming from.
Who would you rather watch at the Monday night? I said Sunday night game. It's a Monday night game. Who would you rather watch, Oakland at Denver or Houston at Baltimore?
Oh, I'd rather watch Houston at Baltimore.
Yeah, that's an easy one.
Yeah.
I mean, if for the Broncos to lose a game, if there's a game that I think if they lose a game in their first four, it's one of those first two games, Ravens-Giants. I would say it's probably the Ravens. I'm still very high on that team, regardless of the issues that they're having on their offense. I still think that this is going to be a solid team because of that defense.
Telling you, the travel out east is going to be a stumbling block.
God.
You say that. Now, Steve is the same guy that picked the Philadelphia Eagles to go undefeated back in 2009, 2010.
Okay, I made a mistake there, but I've never made a mistake when I said
take that back.
To you before in the past, do not underestimate Peyton Manning, ever.
I take that back.
And never underestimate that man.
I got that backwards. You picked them to go defeated. You said they weren't going to win a game after they traded Donovan McNabb to the Redskins. That's what it was.
They still haven't won shit, so I wasn't too far off.
Was this year they had the Dream Team, the first year?
No, it was the year that because they traded Donovan McNabb in division, and they put the offense in Kevin Cobb's hands. Steve believed that they were going to lose every game that year.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I had it backwards.
I still say they will.
Okay. Good for you.
I'm sticking with it, damn it. I don't care if it's been a few years. I'm sticking with it.
You know what that means, folks. We are out of time. Thank you, Jim, for joining us again. We'll see you all next week.
Post-game show is brought to you by Christ, I can't find it. The hell with it.